What's going on, everybody? My name is Freddy Sanchez. This is my first ever podcast. I don't have a name for it, sadly, but I'll get that going in a couple days, couple weeks, whatever. We don't got to rush for a name. You know what I'm saying? Um, Started off, just wanted to introduce myself to you guys. I know you guys are probably gonna be like, "Who the hell is this guy?" I'm nothing special. I'm not no MLB player. I'm not no college player. I'm just a college student out of I go to community college. I am studying to be a journalist slash commentator. So this is just something to put my foot in the door. Podcast about sports. I will be covering college football, NFL, UFC, boxing, baseball, and then other big events that go on in other sports that I can get my knowledge. But those are pretty much what I'm comfortable speaking about to the point where I have enough knowledge that I won't necessarily feel like a casual or talk about something that I shouldn't be talking about. Um, but to get into anything else, I'll just give you guys a rundown of what we're gonna go over. Today specifically, as we go on, talk about more stuff that happens throughout the week. I'll be hoping to post 2 days out of the week, Tuesdays or Mondays, Tuesdays, and then Fridays. So I can Friday cover up the week, Tuesday cover up, or Monday, Tuesday cover up the weekend. Tuesdays will be probably more as it is, as there is like Monday night football games, and I know there's a lot of games on Mondays for other sports such as baseball and UFCs and all that's on the weekend, so that'll be covered up. So for today, we'll be talking about the college football playoff. We'll review what happened. We'll talk about my thoughts on the format of the new playoffs, as I know they went from 4 teams to 12 teams, which I'll get into that later, and then we'll talk about my predictions going on. We'll also be mentioning MLB. We'll talk about the trade rumors, the offseason, the postseason, and we'll talk about what I think some teams lacked and all that. NFL, well, we go over what just happened, the season review, my regular season awards. I'll give you guys some playoff bracket, what I think is gonna happen for the first quarter, for the first round. Maybe I'll treat you guys with some second round things. Um, UFC, we'll talk about UFC. This is one of my favorite topics. Is the UFC. What happened last year? Happened this year. What's gonna happen this year? This is 2025. I'm recording this on January 7th, actually. Um, I'll speak on Islam versus Arman. I'll give you my awards of the year. I'm pretty much going to give you my awards of the year for almost every one of them, except for the ones that, like baseball, that I'll give you guys some of them too. And I'll predict my champions for the end of the year. I'll predict who I think is going to be the champion for 2025 for the UFC and any title changes. Boxing is another one that I like at the same level as the UFC, except I kind of got into boxing a little more before I did the UFC. Same thing as the UFC. I'll give you guys some news on it. I'll try to give you my opinion on certain fights that happen. I'll give you guys my opinion on events that happened this year, and then on some upcoming fights. And then I'll give you guys my boxing awards. Sounds good. So let's just get right into it, you know what I'm saying? We want to college football for a little bit. We'll talk about that one for a little bit, as I think that is a pretty good, the biggest event I think I would say coming up, as the NFL playoffs hasn't started. But honestly, I'm kind of leaning towards college football. I honestly like it a little more. Um, so the first game I actually wanted to talk about was, should we go with Georgia, or should we go with, I'm gonna go with the worst one out of all of them. I think I'm gonna go with Penn State and Boise. I just play it safe. And the reason I say worst, I know Ohio State kind of blew them out pretty bad too, but we'll save that one a little for later, as I'm kind of excited for that one. So Penn State and Boise. I mean, it was. I was kind of rooting for Boise because I didn't want the whole Boise gets a three seed to get a bye. I kind of didn't want to hear that, but I mean we ended up hearing it because Boise got smashed, and I'm cool with it. And I'll just read you guys a couple stats from the Penn State game. Drew Aller, who I think is gonna be a good quarterback. I really like Drew Aller from Penn State. Penn State ranked number 6, Boise ranked number 3. The final score was 31-14. Drew Aller, 13 out of 25 completions, 171 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Damn. Maddox Mason, 23 out of 35 completions, 304 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions. Ashton Jeanty, 30 carries, 104 yards, 3 receptions, 23 yards. And I mean, 104. I don't know when a lot of you guys hear 100 yards rushing, and you're kind of like, damn, they had an off game. That's how good Ashton Jeanty is. But ultimately, after what I saw, Penn State was just like, we're just going to take Jeanty out of the game. And I mean, they did a heck of a job doing that, I swear. Like, I remember I turned it on. I think I didn't turn it on right away. I didn't turn it on right when they started, but I was kind of like, I wonder what they're gonna do. I thought Boise was gonna put up a good fight, put up something decent, but Penn State, oh my gosh, I like turned on and it was like Penn State had 7 guys in the box, and I was just like, Oh, I mean, if I'm Boise, if I would have like been the coaches and preparing for that game, I kind of would have assumed that would have happened, you know. But I think the just difference in quarterbacks was pretty much significant. The difference, I think, Gerald is obviously one of the best quarterbacks in the country, and I mean their run game was. Penn State really ran the ball the way I thought Boise was going to run the ball. I mean, Katrin Allen, 17 carries and 34 yards. Nicholas Singleton, 12 carries, 87 yards, a touchdown. And then they got Tyler Warren, man. That guy's one of the best tight ends I've ever seen. If I'm not mistaken, I think he won the tight end award, for college football. Two touchdowns of the day. I mean, six receptions, 63 yards. Don't get better than that. I'm sorry about that. It don't get better than that. That guy took Boise State out of the game. You know what I'm saying? And I just think Penn State was better, man. I'm not gonna lie. I thought Penn State was going into this playoff one of the favorites. I would say. I know they're the Big Ten. I know they lost to Ohio State and Oregon, but my thing was just they. I mean, their defense is legit too, man, and they have so many weapons on offense. My thing is when you have a good running offense, I think it gives you a chance in any game. Um, because yes, they'll do. Penn State could do that to Boise because of college football. Obviously, in the NFL, you won't see 8 in the box for every play of the game. But I think when your run game is just that good and at such a high level, it just opens up the pass. And even if you don't have a freaking Julio Jones in his prime at a wide receiver, it opens up the wide receiver. It opens up the passing game. And it just seemed that Penn State just outran them, outpassed them. Although I know Maddox has more yards and all that, but it just seemed like Gerald didn't even need to do that, which is crazy. And then I mean, 6 receptions, 60 yards, 2 touchdowns from a tight end isn't gonna be the greatest thing to allow. You know what I'm saying? And the defense was clear right off the bat. And if I'm not mistaken, Abdul Carter was out. Probably, I think he's as a mock draft, he's the number 2 guy coming off the board, or I think first defensive lineman coming off the board. I think number 3 in terms of overall defense coming off the board. Number 2, even though I know you can make a good case, but Will Johnson from Michigan, I know the corner really good, and I just think it was right, like I said already, overmatched, man. There wasn't really nothing much Penn State was gonna do that I think Boise could have countered, and I think it was just more of like a boxing match where Penn State just overwhelmed them early and then just let them coast to the end of the fight. I do believe Drew Abdul Carter is playing next game, so that'll be interesting. Let's see how to play it against. They'll be favored. They'll be playing against Notre Dame, which I think is gonna be a game and a half. But we'll get into that one a little later. And that was pretty much the story of that game. I mean, Penn State pretty much worked Boise, and I mean, it just saw the level of play there, and I don't want to really. You can get into more specifics, but I don't really want to do that. As I just feel like I pretty much that's pretty much story of the game, 31-14. And Penn State's defense was just legit compared to Boise. I don't think Boise's defense was as superior or as talented as Penn State. But one game that I thought was really good defensively was Notre Dame versus Georgia. Man, woo! What a game! What a game! I watched this one fully all the way, and this was a game and a half with number 5th ranked Notre Dame, number two ranked Georgia. I'm gonna say before y'all think I'm like lying or not. I thought Notre Dame was gonna win. I knew Notre Dame, especially once Georgia lost Carson Beck, and I know a lot of people were like, "Oh, but Carson Beck throws picks," and I know Stephen A. Smith on his ESPN First Take was saying, "Oh, but Carson Beck throws picks. I know maybe this could be a good thing." No, 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 no. Carson Beck is legit, and I know people don't want people. Some people don't think that, but Carson Beck's legit, and I knew putting Gunnar Stockton in the game, a guy who they would want to run a lot. I just knew it wasn't gonna work. This Notre Dame defense is too good, man. This Notre Dame, they stopped the run. I mean, Trevor Etienne, 11 carries, 38 yards. You know what I'm saying? Like that. That's putting your foot down right off the bat. And opposed to Notre Dame, I mean, Riley Leonard is just so he's a dual threat quarterback. Obviously, he's not like a Lamar Jackson dual threat quarterback, but he's still really good. I mean, 98 passing yards, 90 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 14 carries, 80 yards rushing. I mean, not overwhelming stats combined. I think it's 170 yards, but that was enough to beat Georgia. I mean, Georgia had one of the top defenses in the country, had the number one linebacker in Jalen Walker, and it's like, what happened there? You know what I'm saying? But it just seemed that that kick return from Notre Dame really, really took Georgia out of the game. And I'm saying that because both teams couldn't score. If I'm not mistaken, it was 6-3 going into that half, or it was, yeah, 6-3, or it was 6-3 out of the first quarter, 3-3. And it's one of those things where special teams is really gonna kill you in these type of games. And I just think Notre Dame killed them right then and there with that special team. And then not to mention the drop passes from Georgia that really could have propelled them to a better, a higher scoring team, but they really didn't have that. I mean, Jadarion Price, 10 carries, 37 receptions, not the bait, not the greatest, you know what I'm saying? And I was really looking forward to Notre Dame showing what they're made of. And by that I'm saying Notre Dame flexing its muscles against a Georgia team, a team where it's the SEC. Everybody thinks the SEC is the greatest team of all time, the greatest conference of all time. I don't think so. All time maybe yes, but right now I don't think so. I honestly think the Big Ten's gonna start running college football for a little bit, and part of this is because you're seeing these teams leave these big SEC schools. Where Alabama, where Nick Saban was there back then, before NIL, you had the third string guy who was a top, who was a first round pick in the upcoming draft. You know what I'm saying? And they were just like, they just had to wait their turn. And now people don't want to wait. Now people are like, I'm gonna go transfer to Notre Dame. I'm gonna go transfer to Wisconsin. I'm gonna go transfer to Iowa. I'm gonna go transfer to Arizona State, who we'll get into later. And I'm just kind of like, it's starting to show. And Jaden Harrison with that kick return really showed the levels to that this game was at. I mean, the special teams was crazy. Like I mentioned, the special teams was just off the charts. I think Notre Dame. I thought Notre Dame was a better team. Especially with I'm really impressed with Coach Freeman, man. That man knows his stuff. That man knows how to rally a football team behind him, rally a state behind him. And Mitch Jeter, I mean, can we clap it up? 11 points, 3 for 3 field goals. I mean, this guy scored more points than Georgia did by himself. You know what I'm saying? So when you when your kicker is scoring more points than your other team, I think you're in good hands, to be honest. And I think we all know that. So basically, more of the story is I think Georgia walked in limping, and I think Notre Dame took care of it, which I really did predict. I thought Notre Dame was going to win. I knew it was going to be a defensive game. I didn't think it was going to be 6-3 going into halftime. I thought it would have been like 21-14, 17-10, something like that. But 23-10 finish. The score will be pretty crazy. So Notre Dame and Penn State, that'll be a good matchup. We'll get into a little bit, but going to the next game, I want to see a little bit of. I want to talk about the Texas and Arizona State game, and that one was ridiculous too. I like this one. I like this one. This was a Texas showdown, and I'm proud of this one. 39-31 overtime final. Arizona State 8-point half, and they somehow came back to tie the game. Quinn Ewers, 322 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. Sam Levi, 24 for 46, 22 yards, 1 interception. And then the moral of the story is Cameron Scatterbo. I mean, 1 for 1 completions, 100% passing accuracy, 42 yards, 1 passing touchdown, 30 carries, 143 yards, 2 touchdowns, 8 receptions, 99 yards. I mean, this guy was ridiculous, ridiculous. Matthew Golden, 7 receptions, 149 yards, 1 touchdown. Great receiving game. Great receiving game. Quatrivion Wisher, 18 carries, 45 yards, 4 receptions, 40 yards. Not bad a game. Contributed good. 85 yards of scrimmage. Pretty good. Really good. And I think although Texas won and got into the semis, which is all you really need to do, you know, I don't think this is a big thing where it's like, oh, we got to blow everybody out. No. But when you're facing Ohio State, the Ohio State, it's like you need to show something, because what Ohio State showed, which we'll get into a little later, is not only did they just flex their muscle, they put a whooping. They put a whooping on that Oregon team, and I'm cool with that. So we'll see what happens with that game. I do have a prediction, which I'll give you a little later, but overall game, I'm really looking into Quinn Ewers. I mean, this guy, I think, faces a lot of criticism because Archie Manning is in the quarterback room. That quarterback room is stacked, by the way. But Quinn Ewers, I mean, you never really saw frustration out of, every time the camera pointed on him, he was just like, like relaxed. I was just like, I mean, I was more nervous than he was, I'm sure, but he really settled that Arizona State team down and really settled down his offense. And I'm gonna get into a little bit about Arizona State's defense, which I do think kind of cost them the game, but I will get into that a little bit later. But I do want to go over that target, and that was targeting, man. I mean, not check down, but up the field, in between the scenes. And I mean, you could make a case defensive receiver, which if I exceed again, I can make my own thoughts about that. But you could make a case for that. But I mean, crown of the helmet to the head, man. That's targeting. That puts him in field goal range, I believe. That'll give him an extra 15 yards. And then Arizona State was like a minute left. I think they just walked on the field, make a couple passes, kick a field goal. I think Arizona State's in the semifinals. But I mean, take your win as you can get it. You know what I'm saying? And I think Arizona State really did mess up that game in overtime when they had Texas on the brink of elimination, 4th and 13, if I'm correct with the specific yardage. But they sent an all-out blitz. Why are you sending a blitz when it's 4th and 13 in overtime? I mean, you saw what Texas did when Arizona State needed to get yards, and you see in the NFL, put an extra linebacker, put an extra defensive back in there, drop them back. No big gain, no big yards. They get an 8-yard pass, cool. You hit them, game's over. You sent a blitz, and you left wide open for a touchdown. You left somebody wide open. Quinn Ewers didn't even have to blink after he threw that ball because you knew that it was a touchdown. And I mean, that stuff really, I feel, took Arizona State out of the game because then Texas came in and they scored on the first play of the game, the overtime, second overtime. So my thing is, I do believe Arizona State lost that game, and I do think that defense kind of weakened up, and I think when they needed it most and when it was the easiest, they softened up. I mean, come on, you like I said, 4th and 13 blitz is ridiculous. Other than that, I do think in that fourth quarter, Arizona State played really well and defensively when they got a pick, and I mean they really shut down this Texas offense, who I think is one of the top in the country, obviously. But that Texas defense is, I believe, ranked number one. And you know who's ranked number two? Ohio State. That's gonna be their matchup soon. So basically, going over that game, I already made everything point. I think they have Ohio State next, which we'll get into exactly right now. Which Ohio State had a victory over Oregon, the number one ranked team in the country. Number one versus number 8. I want to get into this first, though. If I'm Oregon, I'm pissed. I mean, I'm pissed. I'm from LA, so I kind of root for UCLA and I root for Ohio State. The reason I go for Ohio State, back a little story, when I first started playing flag football, I never played tackle football or anything, but when I played flag football when I was younger for the Parks, I remember we were the Buckeyes, and I remember I was like, well, I don't want to be I want to be the Buckeyes, I want to be the Bruins, because that's what I knew. I didn't know who the Buckeyes were, and then the guy's like, my coach at the time, I think his name was Coach Alex, and he goes, man, that's a really good team in the country. And he pulled up his phone or something and like looked it up. And it was like the Buckeyes were ranked like 12th or 10th or something like that. And I was just like, and it was at Ohio State. And as I got older, I mean, I started watching football and I was like, that's Ohio State. That's the Ohio State Buckeyes. So I kind of started rooting for them for a little bit as that time happening. But obviously, Ohio State and UCLA are my top teams that I grew up for. But going into this game, I honestly did think Ohio State was going to win. Although they did lose the regular season matchup 32-31 when Will Haller took a slid and then time ran out. But Ohio State, I thought I think they're more talented. I mean, defensively they're the number 2 team in the country, and then offensively there's a good argument they're number 1. I mean, Jeremiah Smith, man. Let's not even get to that wide receiver team. They got a 2-headed horse in that running back group. Trayvon Henderson and Quinshon Judkins. Trayvon Henderson, 8 carries, 94 yards, 2 touchdowns. Quinshon Judkins, 17 carries, 85 yards. I mean, obviously I do know it was a blowout. Don't get me wrong, but it's like, come on, that. I don't know what that. If you're Oregon, 2 guys almost dropping 100 yards on you is like. Did you even have a chance? No, I don't think so. I think Oregon's team was just really, really outmatched. I mean, Will Howard, 17 for 26 completions, 319 yards, 3 touchdowns, 97.7 QBR. I mean, Will Howard shined, man. I know he doesn't get the credit as like a Dylan Gabriel or a Cam Ward. Obviously, Cam Ward, one of the probably the best quarterback in the class. He doesn't get the credit like a Drew Aller, or he doesn't get credit like other quarterbacks because I just believe the team's so talented that people don't really think. But this guy's legit, man. This guy sits in the pocket and just throws the heck out of the ball. 3 touchdowns, 319 yards. That ain't easy to do as a quarterback. You know what I'm saying? And I do believe a lot of it was because they just started smashing Oregon. I mean, about to, you know what. But on the other end, Dylan Gabriel, 29 to 41 completions, 299 yards, 2 touchdowns, 74. I mean, the rest of it was just the game was 34-0. And I think that's when they just started getting check downs and they started throwing the ball deep and getting a touchdown. Jordan James came out in the first quarter and he still had the most rushing yards for Oregon. Let that sit in for a bit. Jordan James, running back out of Oregon, came out in the first quarter, 7 carries, 14 yards. Had the most rushing yards for Oregon that game. If that doesn't say anything about Ohio State's defense, I don't know what does. And I mean, Trayshawn Holden, 7 receptions, 16 yards, 2 touchdowns. Good game for him. Clap it up. Overall, terrible rushing. I mean, points of the game with terrible rushing from Oregon. I don't think they could have got the ball going at all. I mean, first of all, Ohio State, they looked unstoppable. 8 sacks, 13 tackles for loss, if I'm corrected. Jeremiah Smith, 7 receptions, 170 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns. Ibuka, 5 receptions, 72 yards, 1 touchdown. I mean, this guy's legit. I mean, this guy's the one I'm kind of. I like Emeka a lot. I think this guy gets not overshadowed because it's Jeremiah Smith, but I do think he's one of the best receivers in the country. And this guy makes a big difference in Ohio State because if you double Jeremiah Smith, which I'm gonna get into a little later about the Texas game, how are you gonna? You're just gonna allow Emeka to kill you for 100 yards a game? It's like you as a defense, which I do think Texas is the ranked #1 Texas defense in the country. Though I'm sure they'll be ready for Ohio State in the defensive aspect, but it's like how much could you do? I mean, what can you do? You have to worry about the rush, the pass, and then the yards with the catch is what makes Ohio State special too. I mean, I think that loss to Michigan was really good for Ohio State, man. I mean, they lost and they were. I mean, you could just see the difference in Michigan and Ohio State. I mean, they're it. But that game happened, and then Ohio State just looked like they weren't ready for it. And Michigan is not didn't have a bad year. I mean, in terms of Michigan standard, yeah, bad year. But when you look at it, Michigan had wins over Alabama, wins over who was it? They had another bit. They had a couple big wins over SEC schools, and I'm just saying, this is where I think the Big Ten started to show themselves and say, "Hey, we're the top conference in college football." And you could argue it obviously, but I do think called my argument would be for the Big Ten. Hopping into another thing about how Oregon is, I just think they had terrible special teams, man. Terrible. I mean, I would watch that game and that punter would punt the ball 30 yards, and I was just like, you're giving Ohio State good field position. Like that's part of the worst thing you could do to a team like this, who is that explosive, and all you need to do is get half field, midfield, and they score a touchdown. I mean, that to me, it doesn't really have a recipe for winning there. But I mean, I do think I can't really blame them too much. I don't see a lot of good punters and kickers in college football, but I do think there's some out there. But I do think a lot of teams will maybe look at that and say, hey, we got to invest into some special teams. That's really the moral of the story, I think, in the sense of Oregon and Ohio State. So here goes my little predictions. I'm gonna say between Ohio State and Texas, and then Penn State and Notre Dame. So I know a lot of people think Penn State's gonna win. I have Notre Dame. I have Notre Dame winning a close game there. Very defensive game again, but I do think they get their offense rolling a little better. Jeremiah Love, man. I'm gonna go Notre Dame 20. I'm gonna go 28 to 21. 28-21 Notre Dame. And I think they do. I think they get the job done. And I think they both get a good little start. I think the defense shows up early and then the offense shows up a little later. But I do think I see Notre Dame in the cultural. I do think they're the number 2 team in the country. Actually, I do think Notre Dame would have a win over Texas. I think they would beat Texas right now. Ohio State versus Texas in Dallas, I believe. Ooh wee! I have Ohio State putting a whooping on Texas. I actually have Texas showing up early and showing up good, flexing their muscle, going up. I have them going up 14-7 or whatever, whatnot. But then I have Ohio State just taking over the game, and I have Ohio State really putting a bad beating on Texas. I have Ohio State winning 35-21. I have Ohio State winning 35-21, and I have them winning by 2 scores. In a sense, I have them winning by 2 scores, and I do think I do think it's something that I mean. It sucks to say, and I know I could be wrong because I do think Texas is that good of a team. But I mean, and Texas was ranked number 1 in the country for a lot of time, a lot of this year. For Ohio State to be able to put a whooping like that on them, this is a lot on how good Ohio State did to Oregon. The team was undefeated 13-0, which I'm just like, I mean, if you're the number 1 seed and you had to face Ohio State, I'd be very, very, very disappointed. But let's get moving into some other sports. I did cover a little bit. We'll go into some NFL, and then as we're sticking on the football, we'll stick on some football topics a little bit in my playoff bracket and all that, and my awards. So we're gonna start a little bit with the playoffs, and we'll talk a little bit about I want to get into some of the regular season who teams that kind of surprised me, and I mean the Buffalo Bills, man. They legit, bro. They legit. Josh Allen's over there carrying them hard, man. They don't really got a good wide receiver number 1. Keon Coleman, I think, is doing a fantastic job. But I mean, come on, man. That guy has no help. Realistically, the defense is doing absolutely terrible. I don't think they're the top 10 defense at all in the world, the nation, in the league. And for Josh Allen to be doing that is ridiculous. Josh Allen beating the Lions, it was just I don't know. I see Josh Allen as special, honestly. And then I think the Ravens are really scary. I'm not gonna lie, I had the Bills win the Super Bowl, but now I'm kind of like, hold on now, pump the brakes. I think the Ravens are legit, man. They're starting to find themselves. I think they're starting to play. They're starting to play like the way we thought they were gonna play week 1, and that's scary, man. I mean, I know. I mean, they have the number 3 seed, which isn't bad, but I'm sure they would have wanted number 1 or something. But I mean, can't really blame them. The Chiefs 15-1, basically they lost that last game, threw it away. But I'm honestly surprised with the Ravens, and the one team I'm kind of necessarily surprised as not necessarily shocked, but more caught by surprise was I didn't think the Rams were gonna be this good, man. I didn't. And I think they have a good chance of upsetting a lot of teams. I don't think they could win the NFC, but I do think the Rams can make a statement and knock off the Vikings. I think in the first round, I think they can go up there and probably beat um another team like the Eagles. No, I think getting to the next round, I think the Rams will get knocked out. I don't see them winning the divisional. Because I do think they'll get matches either with the Eagles or with the Lions, and I think at that point it's just you're playing teams that are far superior than you in terms of skill and talent. But I do see the Rams upsetting, and I do see the Rams having the capability of upsetting. I do think they can. Do I think they will? I don't know yet. We'll get into that a little later. But overall, the season was caught by a lot of was a very good season. I liked this NFL season. I really did. I mean, teams showed up. I like the Chargers. Jim Harbaugh coming from winning a national championship in Michigan, coming to coach at Los Angeles, just up that team was just made another level. You know what I'm saying? Another level. So we'll get into that. We'll get into more specifics later in another different podcast. It's just a little give you guys a show what I'm thinking or my thought process is. So right here I have the NFL bracket. I have the Lions with the bye, Eagles the 2 for facing the Packers the 7. That's another one where I'm kind of like, damn, good game. Bucks the 3 versus 6 Commanders, 4 Rams versus the 5th ranked Vikings, and then the 8. So I have the Eagles beating them by 10 in a close game. I have if Love is healthy. I know Love banged up his all right elbow not too long I don't mean not too long ago, but I mean this last game. If he hit somebody's helmet or something. if he's healthy, like 100%, close to 100%, I think the game will be close. If not, I think he was just gonna blow them out of the building. I think. Sorry for the little cut there, some technical difficulties, but yeah. So overgoing the whole NFL, the coach of the year, my winner. Drum roll, please. Dan Campbell. I think Dan Campbell did a magnificent job this year with the Lions, and I think leading one of the number one seed. I think with all these injuries, I mean losing his 1-2 punch in David Montgomery and Jeremiah Gibbs. I mean, we still had Jeremiah Gibbs, but it was by himself. I see them. I see what he did was magnificent job gambling fourth down consistently. I do see them getting an advantage, and I do give it to Dan Campbell. I think he was the best coach of the year. I think he was coach of the year this year, and I don't really think it was. I think it was really close to him and McConnell from the Vikings. So moving on, we'll just storm through these. I'm gonna go NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year. I think Jared Verse from the outside linebacker from the Rams did a magnificent job filling in the void for Aaron Donald retiring and all. And I do think the Rams defense stepped up, and I do think he deserved it. I don't think anybody else was near him, to be honest. NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year, there was one between two. I think I had Jaden Daniels and I had Brock Bowers. And ultimately, Brock Bowers 112 receptions, 1,194 yards, 5 touchdowns. I mean, great year, great year. Jaden Daniels 691 completion, 69% completion ratio, 3,568 yards, 25 touchdowns, 48 carries, 891 yards, 6 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. Overall, really competitive. I just think Jaden Daniels leading his team to the playoffs, and obviously playing the captain with that team, I do think that gives him the NFL Rookie of the Year, which I do give Jaden Daniels. NFL Offensive Player of the Year is between Lamar Jackson, Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, Jamar Chase. So to get into it, Lamar Jackson, 316 completions, 619 completion percentage, 139 carries, 915 yards, 4 rushing touchdowns, 4,172 yards, 41 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Saquon Barkley, two receiving touchdowns, 33 receptions, 278 yards, 245 carries, 2,500 rushing yards, 13 touchdowns. Derrick Henry, we got 325 carries, 1,121 yards, 16 touchdowns. Jamar Chase, triple crown winner at the wide receiver position, 127 receptions, 1,708 yards, 17 touchdowns. Very close, very close. And I think this might shock people, but I'm gonna give it to Saquon Barkley. I just think breaking 2,000 rushing yards in 17 games, I do think he deserves to get the nod. 16 games. And I mean, there was games where this guy didn't even want to play in the fourth quarter. You know what I'm saying? So I give it to Saquon Barkley, and I see Saquon Barkley winning the Offensive Player of the Year, and I do think he had a really strong case for MVP. And we'll get into that a little later, but I do think Saquon gets it. Transform that Eagles team, made it what it is, and I do think the Eagles have a good chance of making the playoff, making the championship. NFL Defensive Player of the Year, I think it was between Patrick Surtain II, TJ Watt, Trey Hendrickson. Henderson led the league in sacks, 17.5. TJ Watt, 6 forced fumbles, 19 tackles for loss, 11.5 sacks. And then, Surtain, lockdown corner. That guy locked everybody else up. I mean, there was, I think, 2-3 receivers that had 100 yards on them. And they weren't on him. I mean, they were just moving around, And honestly, I'm going to give it to Surtain, the corner. The reason I'm going to give it to this guy is whenever you're a corner and you can lock up, you can shut down a side of the field. That's something else. And then they don't have the stats, obviously, all the sacks and all that. They don't really have all these stats that you can go by where you're like, oh, damn it, they're legit. You know what I'm saying? But they do have enough to the point where I do see Patrick Surtain getting the recognition. I do think he's the first player of the year. And I mean, Broncos defense was legit. I mean, Trey Henderson, good defense, but the defense was on the rest of the team didn't really play as well. TJ Watt, good defensive player. Steelers defense was suspect, but I think the Broncos defense really was shined by Patrick Surtain. NFL MVP, we got Lamar Jackson. I already read his stats. Joe Burrow, 70% completion ratio, 4,918 yards, first in the league. 43 touchdowns, first in the league, 9 interceptions. Josh Allen, 63% completion, 3,731 yards, 28 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 12 touchdowns rushing. Barkley, read his stats already as well. So, my thing is, Who was the most valuable? Not the best. I think it was Joe Burrow. I think Joe Burrow was the best player in the league, and no doubt in my mind. But when you look at it as a perspective, who's the most valuable? I think it really came down to these four candidates. I'm sorry, but Lamar had so much help. I'm not taking anything away from Lamar, but I mean Derrick Henry. You got Zay Flowers, you got Mark Andrews, you got Likely, you got all these good pieces around you, and then I didn't mention that defense was legit. So their success was very, 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 very likely because their team. Nobody saw Josh Allen taking the Bills it's the number 2 seed, especially with them losing Stephon Diggs, them losing what's his name? I brain fart, can't really remember his name, but that wide receiver too, who was solid. And I mean, you lose both your number one, you're both your top options, and then you get a rookie wide receiver in Keon Coleman, and then you get Amari Cooper, who wasn't picked up till later in the season. And then you're still at the number 2 seed, beating these top teams, beating the Lions, beating the Chiefs. They beat the Lions. They beat the number 2 top seeds in the league. They beat both of them. So I mean, you got to give props to where the props are due. Joe Burrow. I mean, if his team would have been in the playoffs, I think he for sure would have been out there. Like, no doubt MVP. No doubt MVP. I think he would have gotten it. But since his team really did suffer and he was starting and they couldn't really get anything going, I do think that really affected him in his case. And then they didn't make playoffs. Saquon Barkley, I mean, without Saquon Barkley, the Eagles team is that Eagles team. They're still good, I think, in my opinion, but they're not beating the Lions. They're not beating any of these teams. And I do think the Eagles have a good chance of beating. My NFL MVP, I'm giving it to Josh Allen. I do see Allen being more valuable, being more consistent in his gameplay, and I do see Josh Allen. I think for a stretch, this man was just diming right after he got engaged. I heard diming people left and right. Started just manipulate. What he does to defenses is just ridiculous. You know what I'm saying? And I mean, I don't see how much time and effort you could put into finding a game plan for him. You put a spy out there, you're just opening up the field for him, and if you don't, you let him run and then throw on the run. You're looking at what the best quarterback in the world. So that's it for NFL. We're gonna get into some UFC and some boxing, and I'm gonna start with UFC a little bit. I want to name some of the title changes that happened this year, as I do want to get into a little more later down the line. But UFC title changes, I mean, Sean Strickland dropped it to Dricus, Volk dropped it to Topuria, Sean dropped it to Marab, Edwards to Bilal, and then Vacant and Juliana Pena picked it up, and then Grosso lost it to Valentina. Who do I think can lose it this year? And I think going into this year, there's a couple fighters I think that could lose the title, and I only have 2. I think Marab beats Usman. I mean Umar. I think John Jones drops it to Tom Aspinall. I think Pereira drops it to Ankalaev, and I think Ankalaev. Yes, he talks about, I'm gonna just strike this guy, but come on, everybody knows you're not just gonna strike this guy. You're gonna want to go on there, mix it up, and I see Ankalaev mixing it up, taking the game takedowns, and ultimately finishing Pereira. I do think Pereira, nobody else beats him except Ankalaev, or you get a heavy wrestler in there. I think they can beat him, but anyone that wants to strike with Pereira is gonna get knocked out, and it's not because I see these guys get in there and they're like overmatched. I think these guys get in there scared. I mean, they get in there and they get touched and they're like, "Oh, I'm not gonna get in there again." And ultimately, they kind of doubt it. I'm not gonna shame them. Obviously, I've never gotten hit by Pereira, so I wouldn't know. But I do think Pereira drops the belt on Ankalaev this year if they fight. Obviously, I know the big fights for Pereira are going to be Aspinall and John Jones, but I don't see that happening. I don't see him beating Ankalaev or beating any of those guys. But I do think Pereira stays champion if he doesn't fight Ankalaev. There's 5 fights I want to see going into 2025, starting now, and one of them was Marab and Umar, but they're fighting, so I'm not really going to name that one. Number 5, we'll fight at 1, we'll rank them. 5th, I want to see Ilia Topuria versus Diego Lopez, and the reason I want to see this fight is Diego Lopez is on such a hot run, and this guy's just knocking everybody out and submitting people. And obviously, you got Topuria, dominant champion, coming off 2 big wins over Max Holloway and Alexander Volkanovski, who I think is my fight of the year, which is Topuria. But this fight is going to be a great fight because Diego Lopez absolutely can knock out Yeah, Taporia. And he's one of those guys where he lands one punch and you're out. And I think both these guys can go at it and complement each other's fight style, which I don't think Diego Lopez is going to shy away from Taporia. And I think Volk fought scared, not scared, but more paranoid as he was pulling back too much, and he left himself exposed. And I think Max Holloway was fighting a good fight. Just Taporia got close to him and then let him have it. And I do think that Max Holloway got rocked like he'd never been rocked before, and obviously leading to the finish, which had never happened before to Holloway. But I think this fight, these two fighters complement each other, and I do see that. I do see them fighting if Lopez can either pick up another win, or if Taporia stays in the division. We got Shavkat versus Bilal. I do think this is gonna happen next, obviously, because Bilal's in the fight and then Shavkat just beating Gary. They're already lined up. I think Bilal beats Shavkat, and I think the reason I think that is because Shavkat against his performance against Ian Gary wasn't the greatest thing ever. I mean, Ian Gary took his back, and Ian Gary just did all this to him, took him down. And it's striking. If Bilal doesn't get enough credit for his striking, and I know people like to talk down on Bilal, talk down whatever, but Bilal doesn't get enough credit for striking. This guy mixed it up with Leon Edwards. This guy took down Leon Edwards. This guy mauled Leon Edwards, and I mean just suffocated Leon Edwards in the UK. I don't see Bilal Muhammad losing to Shavkat Rakhmatov at all. I think Shavkat can maybe stop him, knock him out the first, second, third round, but I think Bilal is just going to overwhelm him. And I think you saw Shavkat's gas tank get exposed a little bit as he was starting to tire a lot. And Bilal never really got tired against Leon Edwards. Leon Edwards never got started, you know. So that's the fourth ring fight. I think third is Shavkat versus Dricus. I do think Hamza versus Dricus. I do think this is a lot more competitive fight in the sense of Hamza could be anybody in the first round. I really do believe that. But Dricus his fight style is weird. It's like I'm gonna just do whatever I want to do and let's see if you can stop it. And his fight style is very funny because he just throws like these punches that like make no sense. But Hamza is very explosive. So I'm thinking if Hamza doesn't get him out of the first round, I think Dricus beats him the rest of the fight. I think he puts him out. I think he probably stops him because we've seen Hamza get in that fire with Gilbert Burns. We've seen Hamza get tired with Usman on short rest. By the way, on a short time. So I do think Hamza could beat him in the first round. After that, I give it a Dricus, and I think Dricus wins the next 4 rounds. Number 2 is Ankalaev versus Alex Pereira, which I mentioned earlier, but I do think Ankalaev beats him, and I do think they will fight this year. I just think they've been talking like this. But I think Ankalaev beats him I think he stops him, probably submits him in the 4th round. I do think Ankalaev would just take him over, take him out, and I do think it would be too much for Pereira. But I do think the more this fight gets held on, the more I give a chance to Alex because Alex would be just working on grappling. But Ankalaev does have power in his hands and could take him down, which I do think Pereira would have the respect, and I think it'll lead to Ankalaev's title change. Number 1, we all know Tom Aspinall versus John Jones is a tough one, but I think Tom Aspinall beats John Jones. And the reason I say this is because Tom Aspinall is just too fast. Too fast, too strong, too young, and he's good everywhere. Everywhere. He can wrestle, can grapple, can box, can kick, can mix anything up. Tom Aspinall is the future of the heavyweight division. I do think he can beat anybody in the heavyweight. Right now, the way it's at, if he beats John Jones, nobody beats Tom Aspinall for the next couple of years. And Cyril Gahn maybe, but Cyril Gahn's performance against Volkov wasn't the greatest, and Volkov got demolished by Tom Aspinall last time they fight. So I'm leaning towards Tom Aspinall for this fight. And I want to give a little bit of my thoughts on the UFC 311. So Islam versus Arman, I do think some predictions are going to happen. I do think Islam beats him by submission in the 3rd round. Merab versus Umar, I have Merab winning by unanimous decision 48-47. I do think it goes 2 rounds to 3 to Umar. Yuri versus Jamal, I have Jamal winning by knockout in the 2nd round. I know people are like, Yuri, but Yuri's been knocked out twice right back-to-back fights, you know what I'm saying? Or not back-to-back fights, but he's been knocked out twice by Pereira. And Rakic was waiting. I think Jamal is just gonna come out firing, man. I think Jamal's gonna land some punches to really put him out, and I think he stops Yuri. I think Yuri's gonna be too moving around a lot, but Jamal is flat-footed. I think he's just gonna sit, wait for him to come in, land a big left hand, and I think he'll put him out. Dariush versus Moicano. I have Money Moicano. Show me the money by round 3 submission. I have Holland versus Ritter, not both non-ranked. I have Holland winning by TKO in the second round. I do see Tom Holland keeping it on the feet. And no, as Ritter's a jiu-jitsu guy, I do think Tom Holland keeps it on the feet. Ultimately, puts stopping, kicks him, punches him, and I do think Ritter will quit. I think he wins by TKO. Finally, we're gonna get into some. I'm sorry, not finally. Some boxing and some MLB. So right now, let's get into some MLB. We'll save boxing for a different episode, as I do think boxing is starting up again. But MLB, I want to cover postseason, and I wanted to get over some recent moves, some recent moves, and not grade them, but and then give my final predictions on the upcoming season. So first of all, Dodgers win the World Series. Clap it up. What teams lacked, and then teams who failed. I'm gonna give a big fail to the Baltimore Orioles and the Philadelphia Phillies. I mean, Phillies were looked the best team in the NL for the longest. I mean, I always thought that was Dodgers. I made that prediction a long time ago. I had proof of it where I said the Dodgers were going to steamroll everybody. I think they were just too good, and I said best time to be a free agent was going to be this year because that's when you're going to get paid because they'll just spend so much money. The Phillies never. I mean, you had two guys in the Cy Young race, and you guys lost to a team to the Mets where I was like, I thought you guys were going to put a whooping on the Mets. I mean, I know the Mets are the Mets. They got to the championship series. But the Philadelphia Phillies were just built to win. And then you couldn't really get it done. Like a team like that where they weren't overwhelming in their offense. The Phillies weren't overwhelming. The Mets weren't overwhelming. The Phillies were. The Phillies had Trey Turner, Kyle Schwarber, Bryce Harper, Nick Castellanos. They had Alec Boehm. They had Bryson Scott. JT Room. They have all these guys everywhere, and they still find a way to lose. And this has happened again and again with them when they lost to the Padres and the NLC and they went to the World Series, but they dropped it. And the Philly. This is similar to Atlanta. Atlanta also had this case when they lost to the Phillies when they dropped the other teams. And overall, I think it wouldn't have mattered. I think the Dodgers were just going to win. I think the Dodgers are a better team than everybody else. I just think the Dodgers were built to win. They had enough depth, and that was the main thing is for years and years and years, Dodgers had the depth, and now they added the big pieces. So I don't think anybody beats Dodgers next year either. I think Dodgers repeat, and I think they might even be with a three-peat. And I'm not saying that because I'm a Dodger fan, obviously, but I honestly do think they're just built as the Dodgers have made multiple moves. They've re-signed Tommy Edman, 5 years, $75 million. Teoscar Hernandez, 3 years, $66 million. Blake Snell, 5 years, $182 million. They did lose out on Buehler and they did lose out on Lux. But the Dodgers are a team where they're going to be good for years. Now, they've locked up a 2-time Cy Young winner in Blake Snell. They locked up a guy in Teoscar, fan favorite, good producing power hitter. Tommy Edman, ultimate utility guy, plays everywhere, bats from both sides, fast, can't hit for power. End of the day, Dodgers made the moves they got to make, and I still think they'll get Roki Sasaki. So, and I do think they could. The one thing is, I'm not happy with Lux trade. If I was going to send Lux, I would have liked, although this hurts me to say, to send out Chris Taylor, send somebody else out, James Outman. Go get a reliever you can trust. Because Trent is a good reliever, but he's already older. You don't know if something's going to happen. His body's going to start shutting down. And then Phillips faced some injuries. And I mean, I just think you need that one dominant reliever that could complement Trinan and Phillips. And Vesta's starting to come into that show. Anthony Bonda's doing really well, but I do think they need that one staple in that bullpen where he comes in. It's like lights out. Losing Buehler, I'm bummed out about it as he was a big guy from the farm system, but I do think it was the best for Walker Buehler as he's going to go out and get himself a good contract later on. I think he bet on himself finding a 1-year deal with the Boston Red Sox, and I do think the Red Sox are going to surprise a lot of people, as they also did get Gary Crochet in the trade. So that'll be pretty interesting. Yankees, they let Juan Soto go, which I do think is a good thing. I'll get into that contract a little bit. Bellinger trade, and I do think they lose out on Gleyber Torres, which that was the one that hurt them more, I think. When you look at the World Series, Gleyber Torres. In the playoffs, Gleyber Torres started everything off. Gleyber Torres was always on base. Gleyber Torres earning walks, getting hits, all that. Gleyber Torres was one of the most consistent players in that playoffs for the Yankees, and you let him walk to Detroit. All right. Sounds like a good thing. And then obviously they got Devin Williams in a trade, which I do think is a really good addition for them, as that bullpen could have had that extra guy, which is Devin Williams. Letting Soto leave, in my opinion, was a good thing unless you're going to get it for a discount. I don't think Soto going to the Mets was a great idea. And unless the Mets can obviously start signing a little more pieces, but 700 mil for 15 years, that guy's not worth it. And straight up, I'm saying he's not worth it. People want to say, oh, but he's the best hitter, this and that. He wasn't the best hitter last year. Aaron Judge was. So, and that's the only thing he's good at is hitting. He's not good at defense. He doesn't steal bases. He doesn't do all this. So ultimately, he's going to end up as a DH, in my opinion. I mean, Stanton, I do think will probably stay at DH a little more because I do think Soto's a little more agile. But you're paying $51 million a year for a guy who can hit. Yeah, just that can hit. Otani's making 70, but he pitches, hits, steals bases, makes a lot of contact. So unless Juan Soto can hit 315 with 40 something bombs, 100 a buck RBI, a buck and something RBIs, I do think it'll be worth it. But it steals a couple bases, improves defensively. If not, then I think it was a waste of money. Not waste of money. I'm sorry. That's a little cruel, but I do think Soto needs to show more to be earned, to be well earned. That 51 mil. I don't think he's the star Otani is. So we'll see how that goes. The Mets also. This is the one pickup I did like when they re-signed Sean Manaea for 3 years, 75 mil. And that was a really good pickup for them, as I do see them winning that division. And I do think they'll make a couple more picks, a couple more pickups. As in terms of divisions, I think this is the way it'll go: Dodgers, Padres, Arizona, Giants, Rockies. Just in that order. I have the Mets first, Phillies in second, Braves in third, Nationals in fourth, the Marlins in fifth. I do think Cruz is going to be really well from LSU. I have the Cubs winning the division over the Brewers, and then I have the Reds in third, Cards in fourth, Pittsburgh in fifth. I do think the Cubs will win the division, as I do think the Cubs have made some moves, and I do think they're built really well. I mean, Pete Crew Armstrong is amazing, man. That guy can ball. Excuse me. But the Cubs they did lose a Bellinger, but I do think they're built well enough. I do like their pitching in Shota Managa. I do like their pitching really well. I think they'll make a couple moves here and there. I think they'll find some more pieces to get. I would like the Cubs to find a couple more aces in their line, to get a couple more people in the lineup in that rotation. And then maybe get one more guy for first base. They could use a first baseman. They could use maybe another outfielder, as they lost Bellinger. So I think they will ultimately make those moves. And the Brewers, I think they lost Devin Williams. I think they're gonna really take a hit, and not just because of him, but I do think other teams are gonna get better. Moving on, I have Texas in first, or Seattle, Houston, Anaheim, Athletics. I think Houston's gonna take a dive too. I think Bregman's gonna walk. I don't think he'll resign. Seattle, I think, is built better in terms of the rotation. I really like Kirby. I really like I'm sorry, what's his name? Robbie Ray, I like him a lot too. I do like a couple other pitchers on that team. I can't think of the name, but they have those young bucks up there. That one, is oh my god, I had him on my fantasy team too. Some tall ass cat. That guy's legit too. You know what I'm saying? Eats up a lot of innings, and I do think that one of those guys will be in the Cy Young Award race. And I like the bullpen. I really like the bullpen for the Mariners, and I think in having a catcher like Cal Rayleigh, having multiple people on your team, I really like their shortstop. I really like Julio Rodriguez. I like a lot of these guys they got. And I think they'll end up getting second place. I do think they're going to play off the wild card spot. I got Tigers, Royals, Guardians, Twins, Sox. I think the Guardians took a big hit. Guardians losing out on Andres Jimenez. I think they're just not going to be the same, in my opinion. I don't see the Guardians doing that again. I don't see the Guardians getting the second seed or the first seed anymore. I think the Royals will pass them up, as they have Salvador Perez, Bobby Witt Jr. I really like Menendez in the outfield as well. I like the Seth Lugo. I like their pitching. I do think the Royals will can make them a little better, is getting maybe one one more hitter, one more good power hitter on that team in the outfield. Put him out there, and I just think Bobby Witt's going to be an MVP. I'm predicting Bobby Witt to win the MVP next year, and it's not close for me. It's not really close for me. Um, Finally, I have the Yankees in first, Boston in second, Orioles in third, Toronto, and the Rays. I think Orioles lost out on a crazy amount of furniture. Corbin Burns walking is not the good thing. Anthony Santander leaving is not a good thing. I think they have enough youth in terms of Adley Rutschman, Gunnar Henderson. I keep forgetting that guy's name. Pardon me, but I do think they have enough youth, and they'll build up as they go. But I think those two guys walking really hurt him, especially that rotation. Corbin Burns was being an ace on any of the team, and you let him walk. You don't want to pay him. I mean, that's just on them, and that's why I think Arizona will be third. I don't think they're enough to get over the Padres. Maybe they do. Maybe the Padres don't get any other additions, but I think the Orioles drop. I like Boston a lot. I mean, Jaron Duran's legit, man. That guy's legit. You got Rafael Devers, man. That guy's balling, one of the best third basemen in the world. You got the added Walker Bueller, Garrett Crochet to that rotation. I just like Boston overall as a team that can beat you on any different day and on many different occasions. Um, Boston is a little interesting because I just don't think they're on the level of the Yankees quite yet. I do think the Yankees are going to be first still. I think the additions they got with Bellinger and all, I do think the Yankees will still win the division. I just don't think they'll be as dominant as they were last year, as they did add Devin Williams. Oh, and also they did get Max Fried, so that adds to the rotation a little bit. And I think the Yankees will be more of a pitching team. And I would like them tighten up the defense in the base running. Get another guy who could just go and steal bases for you. Get a guy that could be havoc, and that Jad Chisholm is another one who I think they'll lock up for a little bit. So overall, that's it for me, guys. Uh, Covered MLB, covered UFC, covered NFL, covered college football. We'll go into boxing a little more in the next podcast, but for now, I just wanted to give you guys an idea of what I think of my opinions and all. And obviously, as the sport keeps going, we'll go on and on and on. So other than that, guys, thank you guys for listening. I hope you guys can listen to the next one coming out on Friday or next week on a Monday, Tuesday. I'll see you guys then. Have a good one, and we'll see you guys. Take care. God bless.